Thank you. Awesome. Hi, guests. Welcome to BNC.
Hey, how are you?
Great. Hi, Laverne.
Hi, Laura. Hi, Michael. Nice to see
Hey,
you
how are you?
guys.
Thank you. Great to have you, Michael.
Thanks for having me.
Good evening, Black people and all allies fighting for Black liberation, Black prosperity, and Black joy. I'm Laverne McGee in for Charles Blow, and welcome to Prime. President Biden traveled to Kentucky today to assess the damage caused by deadly storms and tornadoes that claimed at least 74 lives since last Friday. The president met with families of the storm victims and local leaders, ensuring they would receive the full force of the government's assistance in the state's recovery efforts. But while the president was on the ground in Kentucky, back in Washington, there was plenty of scrutiny over his child tax care credit expansion plan. BNC White House correspondent Ariana Manise has more.
Parents received a helping hand from the federal government with the child tax credit, but future payments are in limbo as Democrats are slow making progress on the social spending plan. For 6 months, American families saw an increase in their monthly income thanks to the expanded child tax credit included in the COVID relief package. Over 30 million parents received monthly payments of $250 to $300 per child.
It was a huge help and just tremendous support. There are a lot of fees that come with embarking on the journey to become a business owner. So just to know that I had that support from the government, it was good, you know.
Rashawn Perkins, a new realtor and a single mother of two, says she was able to breathe due to the extra cash. But with the pending expiration of the expanded child tax credit, she's concerned about her monthly finances.
The $500 was a tremendous help. And now to know that we're going to have to rewrite things, we're not concerned with the holidays because we just can't afford to participate.
Democratic leaders have proposed a single-year extension of payments as part of President Biden's Build Back Better plan. Democrats see the expanded credit as critical to reducing child poverty and want to prevent a lapse.
In my district, it's a majority minority district. And when you go to the Black and brown neighborhoods, we have poverty rates as high as 20, 25, 30%. So this child tax credit helps them to put food on the table.
But with the package being stalled in the Senate, Democrats are expressing frustration that families may go without the extra income.
It's heartbreaking, and this explains the disconnect between members of Congress and real people in our communities, particularly those who are hurting the most. There's a disconnect.
President Biden has called Congress to take action to keep the program in place, something parents are urging lawmakers to do as they try to stay on their feet.
We are still in need and we are grateful, and we would appreciate if the help can continue and if they can keep their word. You know, we would appreciate if you can keep your word. We are using it to support our families, and you know, we need the help.
The Senate must pass the Build Back Better Act by December 28th to continue benefits. Part of the holdout continues to be Democratic Senator Joe Manchin, who continues to express concerns over the bill. Reporting from Washington, I'm Ariana Manise for Prime with Charles Blow.
President Biden wasn't the only one grabbing headlines today. Former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin pleaded guilty in 2 separate civil rights violation cases in federal court. Chauvin's first guilty plea was in connection to the 2020 murder of George Floyd and served as the first time Chauvin publicly accepted his role in Floyd's death. The indictment cited that Chauvin violated Floyd's civil rights by depriving his right to be free from unreasonable seizure, which includes the right to be free from the use of unreasonable force by a police officer. Chauvin's second guilty plea was in connection to a 2017 incident in which the former officer kneeled on the neck and back of a handcuffed and non-resisting 14-year-old. That indictment stated that Chauvin also pinned the teenager down by the throat while hitting him in the head with a flashlight. Both the Floyd family and the unidentified teenager were present in the courtroom today for what George Floyd's brother Philonise called a good day for justice. Prosecutors have requested that Chauvin be sentenced to 25 years in prison on the federal civil rights violations to be served concurrently with the 22.5-year sentence for the murder of George Floyd. And joining us now to discuss this, our opinion columnist at The Guardian, Michael Harriot, and BNC's chief legal correspondent, Laura McNeil. Welcome to both of you. Good to see you this evening. Laura, I'm going to start with you, and I want to remind everybody that you were there on the ground for the trial. You covered it when it was happening, and of course, you know firsthand what the process was. So I'm wondering if there was some sort of legal strategy behind this, what happened today, or if this was this a genuine admission of guilt? Was there any foreshadowing of this that you saw?
You know, interestingly enough, one thing that really bothered me throughout the trial about Derek Chauvin is not seeing a sense of remorse throughout that trial process. But when they got to the sentencing stage of the state charges, I did see remorse. And I remember him directly addressing the Floyd family and saying, there's some things coming down the pipeline that I hope will give you a sense of peace. And I think he was referring to this plea deal for him to plead guilty for these federal charges. And so in that sense, I want to believe, to be quite frank, that there is some remorse with him, and it's also obviously in his best interest. The odds were not in his favor that he would have not gotten a guilty verdict on the federal charges as well.
Michael, what are your thoughts on that? Michael, I hope you can still hear me. Are you with us? Looks like Michael is having some trouble hearing us. We're going to try and work on that. But Laura, I want to continue with this discussion. This sentencing, this plea deal, in terms of showing other officers what they could face when it comes to violating rights, do you think that this sends a message with Derek Chauvin today?
Absolutely, Laverne. This sends a very strong message that we're in a new era of accountability for police officers, that our court system is not going to treat them any different than you or I. And we see that based on the Ahmaud Arbery trial, meaning the trial for the killing of Ahmaud Arbery, as well as Derek Chauvin. And so this is something that a lot of people in our communities have been asking for, accountability for police officers. And this is a step in that direction, especially with again, the feds actually going after Derek Chauvin and not just simply turning a blind eye.
So, Laura, does this save him from jail time in terms of his previous sentence?
It does, and that might upset some people. The fact that part of this plea deal, what made it so appealing to Derek Chauvin, is that he doesn't have to serve more jail time. So they're recommending, as you stated, 20 to 25 years to be served concurrently. So essentially, he will be serving his federal time and state time at the same time, literally, and so he's not going to have to do any extra time behind bars. Another really important caveat about this plea deal is 90% of his sentence is going to be in federal prison. Now, keep in mind, a lot of people that he might have arrested that ended up in jail are in those state prisons. So from a safety perspective and comfortability perspective, you would want him to serve, it would be in his best interest, essentially, to serve in federal prison. So that's another caveat with this plea deal.
Yeah, and it seems like he'll still be fairly young. I mean, you know, considering in his 60s when he gets out. Michael is back with us now, Laura. So, Michael, I want you to weigh in on this. Initially, I was asking you if you felt like this was genuine, that he was pleading guilty, or if this was just, you know, him trying to keep himself out of as much hot water as possible.
I think it was a little bit of both, right? I think had he not had the prospect of more time and being found guilty anyway, I don't think he would have pleaded guilty, because we saw what he did in state court. And I think also, you know, we have to realize that these weren't the same charges, right? So he was fighting charges of basically in the state court, he was fighting charges of murder, and in the federal court, he was fighting a different type of charges that wouldn't have necessarily had been as fact and evidence intensive. So I think he didn't have a choice, and I think he also knows that regardless of the outcome of this trial, he's still going to be in jail until he's well into his 60s. So I think it's a little bit of both, but I don't think he just felt like I will plead guilty because I want to give the Chauvin family, I mean the Floyd family, a semblance of closure.
Michael, I want to follow up with you because when all of this happened, we saw something we hadn't seen. We saw people in the streets when George Floyd was murdered, and we saw that video. We saw a movement. We saw people in the streets. We saw people worldwide. Now, you don't really hear the type of outrage that you heard before. Do you think, and even today with this, do you think it's just, okay, we just keep moving on? What happened to all those people who were outraged by the system and outraged by what happened to George Floyd? What happened? Does the movement just go away?
Well, I don't think they went away. I think it's what we've seen throughout history when these kinds of things happen. There's first an initial outrage, and then people get tired of talking about racism, white people for the most part, and they want to go back to their lives. Sometimes it's just like I said something on Twitter, and I made a protest sign, but ultimately they don't have to live with the weight of police brutality and racism and white supremacy that people who aren't white have to live with. So I think we've seen it on the corporate side, we've seen it on the individual side. When we see the outpouring of support during the George Floyd protest, you have to remember that this kind of brutality was happening all the time, and they weren't there. So you can't be surprised when they leave, when they were not showing up in the past.
So, Laura, I'm going to give you the final question here. Is this the end of us hearing about Chauvin? Are we going to hear over the years he's good behavior and he's parole or anything like that? Is this the end of hearing his name, or is he going to pop up somewhere again along the line?
We're definitely not the end of Derek Chauvin. Keep in mind, he still has that appeal for those state charges, saying there should have been a change of venue, saying that the jury should have been sequestered. That appeal has not been reversed or withdrawn, rather. So we will hear more from Derek Chauvin. You can believe that. But it'll be a little while, but he's definitely not gone.
All right, Laura, thank you so much for joining us. And Michael, please stick around. I want to get your take on another story later in the show. And first, American students are putting their lives on the lines for voting rights. I'm going to be speaking with two of them coming up next. Stay with us. You're watching Prime on BNC. Hi, it's Laverne. Can you hear me? I have my students here.
Yes.
Okay, ladies.
Yes.
I'm not sure which of you is which. So the lovely lady with the glasses, can you give me your name?
Kyla Frank.
Kyla? One more
Yes.
time for me.
Kyla Frank.
Kyla Frank, thank you. Perfect. And my other student that we have, can you give me your name?
Yes, sorry. Layla Winbury.
One more time for me. You're glitching a little bit. One more time for me.
Layla Winbury.
Layla Winbury, perfect. We've got Layla and Kyla. Thank you, ladies, both. We've got a 1 or 2 second delay, but I can hear you clearly.
Before we left Washington last week, we in this chamber made a change in the Senate's rules in order to push forward something that all of us think is important. We set the stage to raise the nation's debt ceiling. And yet, as we cast that vote to begin addressing the debt ceiling, this same chamber is allowing the ceiling of our democracy to crash in around us. We could not imagine changing the rules. That is, until last week. Future generations will ask, when the democracy was in a 911 state of emergency, what did you do to put the fire out? Did we rise to the moment, or did we hide behind procedural rules?
Georgia Senator Raphael Warnock voicing his frustration over the Senate's one-time rule change to increase the debt limit with only a simple majority. Warnock calls the Senate hypocritical for not doing the same to pass voting rights. His comments come as the clock is ticking for the Senate to pass a bill before the end of the year. But there are now new reports that Senate Democrats may push Biden's Build Back Better bill to next year in favor of a last-ditch push for voting rights legislation. NBC News is also reporting the black leaders are expected to meet with the president this week to put more pressure on him to get something done. And all that comes as Harvard professor Lawrence Lessig, an election rights activist, and more than 20 Arizona college students have joined radio host and human rights activist Joe Madison in a hunger strike calling for action on voting rights. Madison, who we've had on this show many times, has been on his hunger strike since November 8th, and he is 72 years old. Well, joining me now to discuss this is Arizona State University student Layla Winbury and recent graduate of Virginia State University, Kyla Frank. Welcome to both of you. Being students is hard enough as it is with exams, assignments, but now you've also taken up this cause. So Layla, I'm going to start with you. Tell us, how long have you now been on your hunger strike, and what moved you to join Joe Madison?
Yeah, thank you. So this is day 10, and for me, I come from a reservation, and the Navajo Nation helped Arizona go blue in the last election. However, there's only one postal code for ballot drop-off per 681 square miles, where in Scottsdale there's one for every 15 square miles. So I came out here to represent the Native vote and to work to get the Freedom to Vote Act passed to have all of our voices be heard on an equal level.
Well, it's very mature of you to take this kind of a stand, both of you. Obviously, like I said, being students with so much else on your plate. Kyla, I want to ask you also how you got involved and why.
Most definitely. So I spent the last 3 years of my college experience organizing, and I found out that young people have so much more power and so much more advocacy within them to fight for the things that they believe in. However, there was a large gap in making sure that we, as not only college students, but young Black college students, had the tools and the resources we needed to even advocate for ourselves, and even the commitment to solve the issues that impacted us. And so all those issues that we care about are deeply rooted in our democracy. And right now, our democracy is dysfunctional. And so I not only had to stand up for myself, but for my family, for all my classmates who see that our democracy is not working for us and want to make a difference. And it's been extremely hard. I had low blood pressure this morning. Even sitting here talking to you, it's really difficult on my body. I'm so exhausted and so tired. And I'm just hoping that President Joe Biden hears this plea from all of us who are striking to hold on to our democracy, that he cares and that he prioritizes this issue.
It's actually incredible what the two of you are doing and the others. And so many people have lost hope in the younger generation. They say you don't come out to vote, you're not interested, but you obviously are proof that there are many of you out there who care and are concerned. And thank you for staying with us through this interview, because I know how hard it must be on your bodies, like you said, the energy. Kyla, you mentioned the president. There were reports that some of you heard from the president's staff, but there's no plans to meet with the president. How do you feel about meeting with him? Is that important to you, to hear that he cares, that he acknowledges this? And you started to say, what you would say to him. I'd like you to continue that thought.
Most definitely. It's extremely important. He is the commander in chief. He is one of the most powerful people in the world. And so he has the ability and the power to prioritize this issue. And again, this is a moral plea from us. We are literally putting our bodies, our lives, our time, our energy. I'm talking about time away from our families, time away from our friends, time just relaxing as young people. Many of my peers and colleagues are missing class because of this. And so I just hope that in Joe Biden's heart, that he cares about this issue just as much as we are, because again, we are putting our bodies and our lives on the line.
And Layla, what did you make of Senator Raphael Warnock? What did you make of what he said in his speech yesterday, calling on the Senate to use the same rule change that they used for the debt ceiling and use it for voting rights?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. 84% of Arizonans agreed with the legislation within this bill, and so it's very clear that the partisan divide is there's not an issue. It's the divide is within the Senate. So.
Well, Kyla, Senator Manchin met with the president this week to discuss voting rights and the Build Back Better bill. How do you feel about his and the Senator Kristen Sinema? How do you feel about that dynamic and their obstruction on both of these bills and their stance on the filibuster?
I think both Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema have gone through great lengths to support these bills. Joe Manchin is the co-author of the Freedom to Vote Act. Kristen Sinema has released several statements and has shown us through her votes that she wants this bill to pass. And so again, the filibuster cannot be an obstacle. It's been changed over 160 times. And so I think that it can be, again, the rules of the Senate can be changed to prioritize this bill.
So Layla, I can see, like I said, I can see both of you ladies, really putting out the energy to try and do this interview, which I appreciate. How long do you think you can keep this going? Layla?
Now that finals are over, can you hear me? Now that finals are over, it's been a little easier. It's been getting harder though, like on our bodies. Mentally, we're just starting to space out a little bit, but as time goes on, yeah, it's getting harder. We're just urging to meet with Biden and the staff and to talk about the Freedom to Vote Act and passing it now. The time is now, and our time is closing, so now's the time to act.
Layla, if all 100 senators were watching you right now, go ahead and talk to them. What do you want to say to them?
Represent your constituents. Listen to us. We got you in there, and now it's time to act. Represent us. We're speaking, you're just not listening.
Kyla, how about you?
Oftentimes, our senators talk about young people being the future, and I disagree. We are present right now in this moment. I want them to see the bags underneath my eyes. I have lost sleep because I'm not eating. My body feels heavy, like it's almost collapsing on itself. I'm putting my body on the line for your job that you're supposed to do, that you promised us to do. And it's our constitutional right to have our votes and have them count and have them matter. And so if you can look me in the eye and tell me that it doesn't, then maybe you shouldn't be where you are right now. But I know for a fact there are senators who are on our side who want to see this bill passed. And so I urge you, I'm pleading with you, I'm pleading with the Biden administration to prioritize voting rights now. The window to our democracy is steadily closing. My body cannot take this, but I will continue to strike indefinitely until this bill is passed.
You are both so remarkably brave and strong. And I love what you said about people always saying young people are the future, but you're right, you are the present. So again, I can only commend you over and over again. What you're doing is incredible. It will go down in the history books. What you're doing is significant to many people. And I know both of you are drained in your body, but just know that there are people out there pulling for you. And for you to do this interview is really incredible. It shows how remarkable both of you are. Thank you so much for joining us. Layla Winbury and Kyla Frank, we appreciate you, and please stay safe. And coming up, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis launches a war on wokeness. Keep it right here on Prime. Despite initially calling it transitory, the Federal Reserve made a major announcement today, signaling it's taking aggressive steps to tackle rising inflation that may not decline as expected next year. The central bank announced today it will end its monthly bond buying, a strategy used to help stabilize the economy when the pandemic first hit. By March,